restoring Illinois to greatness. This is Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute and hosted by AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Lauren Cohn, the host of In the Loop, Thursdays evening, 7 p.m. on WYCC, Channel 20 in Chicago.
Yes.
Yeah. I've been on that program before.
You've been on the program.
I did a wonderful job, as I recall.
It was the beginning of your career.
Yeah, that's right. You launched me. Thank you. My last appearance on television. So, Lauren, this week, in addition to the governor's budget address, which was sawing some sawdust over the budget impasse, we saw Democrats resuscitate this bill they tried to move last year, to strip the governor of his power to collectively bargain with the state's public sector unions, most notably AFSCME, the largest state public sector union, representing about 36,000 state workers, because the governor has made the collective bargaining agreement adversarial, which it's supposed to be like it, which happens in the private sector between employers and the trade unions, for example. But that's not what AFSCME and SEIU want. They want their guys to be on both sides of the table so they can negotiate good deals amongst themselves and cut out the taxpayers.
Sounds like the Chicago way or the Illinois way.
Exactly. I mean, it's brilliant if you can get away with it, as they have for so many years, which perhaps explains why Illinois is the worst governed state in the nation. So they resuscitated this. This was very controversial last summer, you recall, because supermajorities of Democrats, so you think they could ram this through. But one Democrat failed to show up, his name Ken Duncan, who, by the way, in the interest of full disclosure, an organization I'm affiliated with, donated $500,000 to Ken Duncan's primary campaign to help him try and get across the finish line against the onslaught he's now facing from Madigan for failing to show up for that vote last year, and thus Madigan could not override the governor's veto. And so the governor continues with not only the budget impasse, but also the contract impasse with AFSCME. Democrats bring this back up again, and they get even fewer votes this time. So it doesn't seem like it's going their way as long as you have Rauner in the governor's mansion. But it doesn't mean they're not going to stop trying. And I guess the contrast of this is so interesting because they did this the same week that West Virginia, a longtime Democrat state, coal mining state, blue-collar state, became the 26th state to have right-to-work legislation, worker freedom. So just the contrast between a state trying to bootstrap their way back to growth versus a state that is going to continue to perpetuate failure, I think, is instructive.
And just waste people's time. It's just a waste of time. It makes no sense. And it makes, let the governor, he's negotiated, 17 successful contracts so far? And what is AFSCME looking for? They want a huge pay raise over 4 years.
With these crazy right-wing organizations, like the Teamsters. Right, exactly. He's been able to sit down at the negotiating table with, other unions and negotiate deals.
They took a salary freeze.
That's right, they did. That's right, they did.
AFSCME wants a 12 to 29% raise over 4 years, a less than 40-hour work week. When was the last time you worked a less than 40-hour work week, Dan?
No, never, but...
and 5 weeks of vacation, I read?
I mean, it's just a couple $1 billion between friends. This is the attitude that AFSCME at the leadership level has. They have enjoyed the blank check for so long. They don't want it to end. And I understand that. I mean, I would like a blank check too, but unfortunately in this life, nobody gets a blank check.
Well, in the bigger picture, it's not sustainable anyway. I mean, if you can't, bankrupt everybody to pay for these contracts and these, pensions. It's all going to be gone anyway. So wake up.
Well, this is it. And this is the question of whether or not maybe some internal pressure. It's about time for some internal pressure from state workers and other public sector workers who can do math and recognize that, if you're like 45 years old, younger, you think this is all going to be here, what they're guaranteeing you is going to be here when it's time for you to retire? I mean, do you really believe that this can go on in perpetuity? Given all the contextual information you're just going to continue to buy the propaganda that AFSCME and SEIU and the teachers' unions, for that matter, are spewing? I think that, from conversations, there's a lot of sensible people that work in state government, local government, police and firefighters and teachers. They know. The question is, and this is kind of like the larger question about Illinois, people who know better, when are you going to stand up and demand better and say we're not going to tolerate being lied to anymore? That to me seems to be the fundamental question, because the math is a settled issue.
And allow yourself to have a voice and not your top representative who's cutting deals behind closed doors do it for you.
But you're right about this vote. This was a symbolic vote for Democrats in particular, as we're a month away from a primary election and with targets going into the general election, to kind of reestablish their fealty to the public sector union so they can get campaign cash. We're continuing to fight it. It's that robber baron, as Hillary Clinton calls him, Bruce Rauner, who won't let us do for you what we want to do for you, which is extend the blank check in perpetuity. And so the question is, again, for those people that are not on that gravy train, are you going to make different decisions on March 15th and come November with respect to your local representatives, for those that are being represented by roll call votes for Mike Madigan, particularly in the suburbs? You're going to finally connect the dots and say, oh, I understand my representative, I may like him or her, but he or she goes to Springfield and it's just a roll call vote for Madigan. So I'm going to make that linear connection, and I'm going to stop supporting my local Democrat roll call vote for Mike Madigan in places like Northwest Cook County and Lake County and elsewhere.
And it's very important at this time not to be apathetic about this. If you think that you can't make a difference, your vote can't make a difference, you're wrong.